Syracuse deserves credit for beating Clemson handily, and their recruiting and transfer portal efforts are about to go up because of it.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Portal Podcast on this crossover edition with Locked On Syracuse. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast and Locked On Syracuse a part of your day every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where new customers can bet $5, and if you win, you can get $300 to use across the FanDuel app or FanDuel.com. Syracuse, they had a phenomenal game against Clemson from the outset. They deserve it, and most importantly, they deserve it in discussion with recruiting. Fran Brown and his staff have done a great job there, and don't discount what this is going to do for them in the offseason for the transfer portal too. They're going to win in both those categories, and we're also going to talk about everything they did from a coaching perspective to gain credit for the program, and then just punching out of the gate. We're going to talk about it straightforward. They punched them in the mouth. They couldn't run the ball well against UConn, but they did against Clemson. You got to give Fran Brown and his team a lot of credit. And to help me do that, Jackson Holzer, Locked On Syracuse. Jackson, thank you for joining. Looking forward to this. I remember the message that you sent me yesterday that I just referenced. Couldn't run it really on UConn, but we do against Explain that to me, would you please?
I can't, other than the fact that they just decided to go into this game and said, we're going to punch Clemson in the mouth. The one thing about Fran Brown that I referenced in the lead up to the game was how, the era has, it's been mostly great, right? But it hasn't been perfect. And they've lost 4 games in the Fran Brown era. And my message was, in none of those games did I really feel like Syracuse was scared of the moment, that they were playing with fear, that they looked like the deer in headlights, like the moment was just so much for them that they could not handle it. When Syracuse would lose games and they will continue to lose games at some times in the Fran Brown era, they will not be perfect for the rest of his tenure at Syracuse. Sorry, I wish they do go perfect. But the point being is that when they have lost games, they didn't execute properly. They came out flat. The opponent was simply better than Syracuse, like I talked about in week 1 against Tennessee, where Tennessee was just simply a better team than Syracuse, and sometimes you have to tip your cap to the other team because they're good. But they were not scared of the moment. So they go into Death Valley, a place where they've never won before. They have never won at Clemson up until Saturday. I was surprised they came out running the football, and I guess it caught Clemson off guard too, that Syracuse was going to come out running. First 3 plays, all runs, all pretty big runs as well. And then you hit them with a couple passes, you got a touchdown. But my favorite part of the game, Brian, the surprise onside kick. It was a genius call. And it's not just because it worked. It's not, because think of it this way. To that point, do you really trust the Syracuse defense?
Do I? No.
Okay. Neither do I. And many Syracuse fans at the time did not trust the Syracuse defense either. You're going up against Clemson. You're not going to get the ball to start the second half. You just scored on your opening drive. Clemson's not expecting you to kick an onside kick, because why would you do an onside kick? At that point, what's the difference in field position, really? Like, okay, they're going to get the ball past midfield. It's going to put them in scoring range pretty quickly. But what's the difference? We saw Clemson at the end of the first half go 90 yards on Syracuse regardless. So why not give yourself a shot to get the ball back? And that's exactly what they do. So the play calling there, the special teams execution there was perfect. And before even Clemson touches the ball, Syracuse is up 10-0. They had to get off to a fast start, plant the seed of doubt, get that Clemson crowd to turn on their own team. And then from then on, they pretty much coasted to victory. But there is that one thing that happened in the game that can that kind of has to ground you a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. I want to talk about 2 things. You brought up the punching them in the mouth, and that is valid. They didn't just do a good job of that. They were consistent with it. some of the runs, they were just doing split zone, basic kind of stuff. It's like TJ Parker and, Woods, like those guys are going to get drafted.
Yeah.
How did they suddenly block guys that are that good after struggling against UConn? Like that is just unfathomably insane.
So I also referenced this on Locked On Syracuse. Can't remember if it was last week or the week prior. How Fran Brown teams, doesn't really matter who they're playing, they seem to always play them close. It doesn't really matter. They could be playing Miami, who's a top 5 team in the country with Cam Ward in their building, and they can win that game in a close margin. They can play Stanford, maybe the worst team in the ACC, and lose it. And it almost does not matter. So when Syracuse beat UConn, a lot of Syracuse fans and a little bit of myself were panicking after that game. Because, they won the game, but they looked terrible. And if you play that way against better competition, you're gonna get annihilated. Right. It's not going to be a fair fight. It's going to be brutal out there. But my hope was, you know what? They survived it. They did not allow it to become the Stanford game in 2024 because this time they won it. They beat UConn. They survived. They won. And now you can just kind of take a deep breath for the rest of the season. You did not have that black mark on your resume where it's like, what was that? It's okay. You won. Be happy that you won. Move on and play better against Colgate, which they did. It's Colgate, but they played much better against this FCS opponent than they did last year against a team like Holy Cross. So you played better this year. How is that going to translate against Clemson? Apparently it did. Because they ran the football, they committed to the run early. Clemson had no answers. So going forward with Syracuse football, and we'll talk about Ricky Collins, if they can keep establishing a run game with Yassine Willis and Will Nixon, and maybe you mix in a guy like Jaden Hart as well, it's very, very difficult to stop this Syracuse offense because you already know they're going to be able to throw for a lot of yards.
I agree with that. My other point about them is the defense. The secondary seemed to be a little better than I anticipated. I mean, Jackson, you know about Syracuse's roster depth chart far more than I did. Was it as surprising to you as it was to me? They were at least competitive. I mean, Syracuse went up against a wide receiver unit. It's got some NFL guys.
Yeah.
They can run. They got size, all of that. What were your thoughts there?
It wasn't too surprising. And some of it is because of Syracuse and how they have young guys who are getting better. Demetrius Samuel's young. He's getting better. Chris Peel is young. He's getting better. Those are your starting corners, right? But Clemson's also been off. Their passing game has not been as good as advertised or as we thought it was going to be in the preseason. So you factor the fact that, okay, Syracuse is getting better. They're young in the secondary, but it's talented and they're better. And Clemson's passing game's been off. Yeah, I know the names, and they got Antonio Williams back, but it did not surprise me that it was they at least held up enough.
That's fair. That's fair. When we come back, I want to transition a little bit, talk about the ability for them to evaluate the portal and do well, and also kind of get into this next group of portal and recruiting. Look, man, y'all are going to be sitting pretty because this game is going to have ramifications. It's going to help Syracuse football for a long time. That is next here on the Portal crossover with Locked On Syracuse. Today's show is brought to you by the Game Cap. This is an opportunity for you to get something that I used to wear all the time. And if you're a college football fan, go into rivalry games with a cool hat. I love hats personally, but there are some from the back of the 80s and 90s that a lot of people probably don't remember. So if you could be at any rivalry game for your favorite team, what hat would you wear? Yes, I said hat. In the 80s and 90s, we had all kinds of vintage styles that were cool. Syracuse, Florida State, any school you wanted. And now, with the help of Locked On and using code Locked On, you can get a vintage hat for $16.99. Just head to thegamecaps.com. That is thegamecaps.com. Grab your team's classic hat, and you can do it instead of paying $30 or $35 at the local mall. Use code Locked On for an exclusive discount because legends wear the game. All right, Jackson, we have a fun thing to talk about next that I know you're excited about. Give me 2 or 3 guys, first off, that Fran Brown and his staff did a good job with, that brought in for the portal. And then I want to transition. In your opinion, I'm going to compare with you what I think that's going to happen after the season, how big this win is in terms of perception. So go ahead. Give me a couple of guys that you think have really helped the Quse this year.
Sure. Well, the secondary was a question mark in the offseason, and it was a question mark heading into the season. One addition that they made at corner was a true freshman in Demetrius Samuel. So that's not a portal addition. So how about the other corner in Chris Peel, who was a 4-star Georgia recruit in 2023? Can you guess who his primary recruiter was, Brian?
Fran Brown.
It was Fran Brown.
I'm
surprised, honestly, that Chris Peel did not follow Fran Brown to Syracuse last offseason. But, he waited another year at Georgia, got a little bit of snaps there, but not a whole lot. So he decides, I'm going to hit the portal. He comes to Syracuse. Voila, there's the opportunity. And I think he's done a pretty nice job so far for the Orange. So that's number one as far as portal additions. Gary Bryant as a linebacker for Syracuse, an FCS All-American. That's right, I said FCS All-American. I think he has done so far a very nice job for Syracuse. Him and Antoine Delorier look like a solid linebacker duo. And I also want to shout out this player right here because I don't know if he's getting enough love. Trip Woody, the kicker. I believe they got him from Iowa. The reason why I'm going to shout him out is because I thought he made the most underrated play of this entire game against Clemson.
Please indulge me.
So the situation is this. It's the beginning of the second half, and Syracuse's defense, they get a stop, which is good. They're up 24-14. Now they have the ball, but they're pinned in their own territory. And Jonte Cook, another great transfer portal addition. Steve Angeli finds Jonte Cook for a 59-yard catch and run over the middle of the field. So they start deep in their own territory, but now they're set up in scoring position near the red zone, but you still need a first down, I think, to get to the red zone. But unfortunately for Syracuse, the drive stalls out. So you got 4th and 10, you're not going for it, and it's a 49-yard field goal for Trip Woody. At this point of the game, Syracuse is up by 10 points. You just completed a 59-yard pass, and you're telling me you are not going to get points there, and if you miss the kick, Clemson, only down 10, is going to get good field position against a defense which up until that point, you'd probably think is pretty shaky, because that's before they started forcing turnovers. And Trip Woody nails a 49-yarder. Gives them a 27-14 lead. I know it's only 3 points, but sometimes a field goal counts more to the mental aspect, I guess, because if you're at 4th and goal in the 1 and you have to settle for a field goal, that's deflating for an offense. That's deflating for a team that has to settle for the field goal. But 49 yards in that situation after you completed a 59-yard pass, underrated moment of the game. Probably the most underrated moment of the game. So shout out to Trip Woody as well.
Yeah, Gary Bryant, they've got different guys that came in, Ferguson on the offensive line, etc., Cam Pringle. Some of these guys have worked out better than others, but why do you think Fran does so well with the portal? Getting a kicker to work out, that's a whole nother. Figuring out kickers is the bane of my existence. But why is he so good at it? Because I don't think there's any doubt he's done a lot better than most people.
I think there's two things that he does. He looks at a player and he says, "What's your talent level?" I don't care what your role was at your previous school. What's your talent level? If you notice with Fran Brown and his transfer portal additions, a lot of them are former 4- and 5-star guys that were playing at a certain school and just did not work out. A perfect example of it is Jonte Cook, 5-star wide receiver in 2023. For whatever reason, on field, off field, whatever it was, it did not work out at Texas. And then for whatever reason, it doesn't work out at Washington. But Fran Brown looks at a player and says, okay, you got talent. I know you got talent. You did not become a 4- or 5-star recruit that went to this school by accident. Steve Angeli, transfer from Notre Dame, 4-star high school prospect, competed for the Notre Dame starting quarterback job. He's got talent. And then he sells them on this. I'm not going to guarantee you a starting job. I'm impersonating Fran Brown here. I'm not going to guarantee you a starting job. I'm not going to guarantee you everything. But what I can guarantee is that you will get an opportunity at Syracuse to play a big role. So Chris Peel, you transfer from Georgia. I know you really didn't get on the field a lot at Georgia, and there's no shame in not getting on the field a lot at Georgia. So come to Syracuse, and you're going to have an opportunity because I know you have talent. So it's talent from high school, maybe hasn't been realized just yet. And then it's the fact that it's putting players, I guess, in position to succeed, but really it's just opportunity.
I think that's a really good way to put it because, like, Syracuse has plug and played some guys. I mean, and it's been really, really impressive. To that point, you mentioned one of the guys. Pronounce the middle linebacker for me again. Antoine
Delorier.
Yeah, Delorier. He graded out at 93% run defense against Clemson. Those are all juniors, seniors, and fifth-year seniors up there playing on that line, and they played pretty well. That's a really good sign for them. Like, they're picking guys that some other teams may or may not have wanted, and they're hitting.
Yeah.
Look, that's the definition of how you recruit. That's the definition of roster management. Hats off to Fran Brown and everybody in their back office. They figured it out. And like, I think it's better for college football when teams like Syracuse, Georgia Tech this year, they might end up in the ACC title game. This is fun. But to do that, because like you said, you're not going to recruit the same kids UGA does over and over. Be realistic. You got to find the ones that fit you and get it done. And man, I tell you what, Syracuse is in the contention from both a recruiting perspective and a portal perspective to do well there. Before I go on, though, I just want to touch on this, and we'll finish up in the last segment. How much do you think Syracuse gains a big bang on the recruiting trail for winning in Death Valley? What's your take on that?
I think it's massive. And I don't care if Clemson is good or bad this season, because we discussed going into the year how, look, the schedule is really challenging for Syracuse. It's a brand new team. It's a young team. We all understand that you might not be able to replicate 10-3 in 2025. That's okay. But you cannot have a disaster season. You can't. And if you have the disaster season, that could derail every bit of progress that this program has made. So by recovering to beat UConn, following it up with a blowout victory versus Colgate like you were expected to, then going on the road for the first time in program history and beating the Clemson Tigers, you're setting yourself up to make a bowl in 2025, which is really all you can ask for.
Yeah, I agree with that. When we come back, I'm going to discuss my take on that because I think that Clemson, that game for Syracuse, is going to be massive for a long, long time. That is next here on the Portal Crossover. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. And with the NFL season here, FanDuel is here to help you kick it off with a can't-miss offer. Right now, you can get $5 down, and if it wins, you get $300 to use across the FanDuel app or FanDuel.com, however you see fit. If you want to bet on the MVP race, who's going to win the AFC, if you want to talk about over-unders, halftime scores, or anything else across the FanDuel app, it's up to you. You can do it however you see fit. So you're ready to play. Download the FanDuel app now and use FanDuel.com as well to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And are you going out and spending money on your local economy, your local neighborhoods? Square wants you to, and I think you should as well. Support your favorite spots in your local neighborhood and use Square. There are certain businesses, whether it's your coffee shop, where you get cookies, where you get dry cleaning, or anything else, where if you can spend a little bit more on the local communities, you're doing yourself a favor and all those people around you. I like going places and working on stuff for all my shows and drinking coffee and just having a bagel or something. You can do that too. Out in Tallahassee, they've got a lot of cool places near Florida State. Some of them include the Bark, Newberry, Deals Outlet, and of course, you've got Black Dog Cafe. That's a really good place for breakfast. And that's just one example. If you're going to go out and support your community, try to do it as often as you can. Don't take it for granted. And with Square, you can go to square.com/go/LockedOnCollege to learn more about it. Before you go, make sure you do support your local community. We will see you soon with Square. All right, here's my take on Syracuse beating Clemson. 2 points. Number one, it will help them solidify their 26th class. A bunch of teams in the South, Georgia Tech, Florida State, Miami, Clemson, Florida, etc., are probably trying to get some of those kids to take visits, and some will. But winning at Clemson is going to help you still sign more of them. That's point one. Number two, beating Clemson is going to help you with the 2027 and 2028 recruits and on down the line. You're solidifying yourself as not just a one-year program. You are now a program that can do it anytime. They didn't just beat Clemson. Syracuse beat them badly from start to finish at the line of scrimmage. Did not see that coming. And they also just hit those exciting plays, like the pass you're talking about to Cook, like the play you talked about earlier, Jackson, onside kick. I mean, that was, I'll give them credit. That's tip of the cap right there. That's fun. You know they're sending out different types of video to these recruits. Hey, this is what we just did. Sending stats. And why wouldn't you? Syracuse earned all of that. So here's my prediction. As long as Fran Brown is at Syracuse, they're going to be a viable option for any team east of the Mississippi. And if they get a California kid or two, or maybe somebody from Seattle, would it shock me? No. He can coach. He can recruit. He's a motivator. He knows how to get it done. And I think Fran Brown deserves a lot of credit. But so again, just to be clear, so does the back office staff. So does everybody else, from the portal to the high school ranks. They're doing a great job. So do you think that I'm off base on any of that, or is there any other way you would look at that? What are your thoughts?
I don't think you're off base at all. And it's just shocking that it's seemingly a reality right now. This is basically the best case scenario which has happened since Fran Brown has taken over. He talked a big game when he came to Syracuse. He really did. And he definitely made some splashes in that first transfer portal class. One thing that I didn't really talk about a lot, though, last season is a lot of the big contributors of Syracuse were holdovers of the prior era. Not to discount all the moves that Fran Brown did make, because he certainly made a lot, but Arande Gadsden, Marlo Wax, Trevor Pena, he didn't break out until Fran Brown arrived, but Trevor Pena was a holdover. LaQuint Allen, a holdover. A lot of Elijah Clark. I can go on and on about how many holdovers were on the team last year. And then you solidify it with Kyle McCord and Fidel Diggs and a few more players. This is different. He had to completely remake the team. You got to have a new quarterback. You got to get a new receiver because Trevor Pena decided to leave in the spring portal unexpectedly. You had to revamp the defensive line a little bit because your best defensive lineman from a year ago, Murad Watson, he decided to transfer to Texas. More power to him. Your 4-star corner in Marcellus Barnes you got in your first ever recruiting class in 2024, he transfers to SMU. You had to completely remake this team. And this, Brian, could be the icing on the cake coming up here. Or it could completely derail Syracuse. I guess that's the million-dollar question, which is, how do they respond with Steve Angeli being out the season? Tore his Achilles. That was just the heartbreaking moment of the Syracuse win. It's the bittersweet part of it, which is, think about what if Steve Angeli was still healthy. This team could probably compete in the ACC, maybe win 9 games. They could have maybe matched what they did a year ago, which none of us thought was going to happen.
True.
Now you have Ricky Collins. Imagine if Syracuse, I'm not going to sit here and say Ricky Collins is going to play like Steve Angeli, but imagine if he plays well and Syracuse still wins a lot of games. So now the pitch is, so I did it with Kyle McCord. I did it with Steve Angeli. And I did it with a backup quarterback in Ricky Collins for the rest of the season after an unfortunate torn Achilles for Steve Angeli. Oh, by the way, Luke Carney, a true freshman, is now the new backup quarterback. He's 1 snap away. This is just ridiculous. If Fran Brown could somehow get this team to win, not just make a bowl, but still be very, very viable in the ACC as far as contending for it, win 5-6 games in the conference, the sky is the limit for this program, where you're legitimately thinking, could this team be a playoff team in 2026? And could they maybe go further in 2027? I can't believe I'm saying that stuff because it's Syracuse football. They have not really been relevant since the 80s, 90s, and very early 2000s. For 2 decades, this program has been basically dormant. Nothing. And now all of a sudden we're sitting here saying, so if Ricky Collins is good, probably not a playoff team this year. It's not going to happen. It's okay. Could you be a playoff team in 2026? Is that a realistic expectation for this program? I mean, Brian, you can answer that question. Do you think that this team can make a playoff in 2026?
It's possible if they spend a little money on defense. I know they're going to score. They figured that out. They got to spend a little in the portal, but they're doing it with less talent now. So what if you added, let's say, one more really good DB and one more really good defensive lineman? Why not?
Top 20 class coming in 2026. What if you're top 15 in 2027? What if you're top 10 in 2027? It sounds nuts until you realize, wait a minute. Look at where he's going with this. Look at who some of the studs are in Syracuse football right now. 17-year-old corner Demetrius Samuel. True freshman middle linebacker Antoine Delorier. Chris Peel is a young guy. He's another corner for you. Jonte Cook has eligibility. Darryl Gill's got eligibility. Yassine Willis is a true sophomore running back. There's already pieces here. You can add to it now, just further investment in this program. I don't know if they're ever going to get to that level where they could truly win a national title, but there is a remote chance now where we're talking in maybe 2027 where that's a possibility. It doesn't make any sort of sense from maybe an outside perspective, but that's what I'm seeing with this program right now. And I try my best to call it down the middle with this program. I do my best. I know I'm a Syracuse fan, Syracuse alum. I'm always going to try to see the positive, but I want to remain realistic and grounded. That's why I still need to see what happens for the rest of the year with Ricky Collins. But if they can somehow pull this off with Ricky Collins and he performs well, why can't they be a playoff team in 2026? And why can't they do more in 2027?
It's possible. I could see it. So I don't know what's going to happen with them, but like every time that myself or anybody else doubts Fran Brown's program, they step over that hurdle. That's fact.
I didn't pick Syracuse to beat Clemson.
Nobody
who did. It was college game day, and it wasn't, who do you think is going to win, Syracuse or Clemson? It was, do you think Syracuse is going to cover 17.5 points? That's what they were doing on there, and to their credit, most of them picked Syracuse to cover, but nobody thought Syracuse was going to win outright unless you were a super optimistic Syracuse fan or you were a very pessimistic Clemson fan. That's it. Every talking head, including myself and you, was like, this is not a good matchup really for Syracuse. Look on paper, that's not a very good matchup. Look how they did against Tennessee. It's similar talent level when you're looking at a team like Clemson. Nope. Don't matter. Absolutely not. So what happens when Fran Brown starts getting 4- and 5-star guys? What's going to happen?
Well, as long as he can manage them, they can win a lot of games. That's always the key. He's done a great job with the mix and match, which is harder in some ways. Some portal, some under the radar guys, and a handful of really good recruits. He's been the master. So I won't vote against him doing it because I think it's a great story. That I know. Jackson, tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
Sure. I'm the host of Locked On Syracuse. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, any audio platform out there. On Twitter, at JacksonH_52. And the Locked On Syracuse Twitter account is at LO_Syracuse.
Appreciate that, sir. And thank you for joining me today. You can find the Portal Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Podbean, or any other place you get your pods. Please like and subscribe. We will see you again soon.